In Ontario, prisoners can only make telephone calls if they dial collect, and their loved ones on the other end of the line pay for that conversation. So how much does it cost to talk? Well, the families say they'll never know until the bill arrives. And one mother of an inmate says that's not fair. And she's at the heart of a class action lawsuit filed yesterday in Quebec. That's where Bell's national headquarters are located. Joey Zukran is the lawyer filing it. He's in our Montreal studios this morning. Morning, Joey.
Good morning, Hallie.
Tell me about the woman at the heart of this case.
So the lead plaintiff at the heart of this case is Carol Ouellette. She contacted our office because she's been receiving some egregiously elevated bills from Bell Canada in the last few months especially. When we looked at her bills, we see that she's been charged in the last 3 months over $157 for only 12 calls. These calls originate from Quebec, and she's receiving them in Quebec. We consider these calls to be local. The cost to Bell is the same for a call whether it originates from Montreal or from Sherbrooke. Some would argue even across Canada. Today, Bell sells plans for $6.95 a month where you can talk unlimited across Canada. So somebody paying $157 for only 12 calls is certainly shocking.
Is she talking? Is it her son that she's talking about?
Exactly. Okay. So her son is in prison, and he's calling her, every so often from jail. And she at one point starts getting worried to answer the call, which is very sad because these people in prisons also need comforting and reassurance on the outside.
Where is her son in prison?
He's in prison in Trois-Rivières.
And she lives,
She lives in the city of Richmond, which is close to Sherbrooke in Quebec.
In normal terms, would that be considered a long-distance call?
Look, depends what kind of plan you have. Today, I would say most plans, if you go online, like I said, you can go to Bell's website. For $52 a month, you can have an unlimited Canada-wide plan. So as far as I'm concerned, these are local calls, and I'm certain that the cost to Bell is the same.
No, I understand what you're, How has she explained to you the impact this is having on her relationship with her son?
Well, she certainly is not going to refuse any calls from her son, but she does tell me that when the phone rings, she gets a little bit, starts getting worried. Because, and I asked her the question. I said, how much have you paid overall? Since you can go back as far as 3 years. So I said, how much have you paid in the last 3 years? She says, I'm scared to count because if I start counting, I may not answer the next call.
I'm wondering, if in a broader sense, how much this all adds up for all families of inmates or for criminal lawyers, presumably, who are having to take calls from inside the prison.
Yes, exactly. So I'm assuming I've received a few of these calls myself, and they're upwards of $20 each time. CBC reported back in February there was a lawyer named Michael Spratt, if I'm not mistaken, who has a 37-page collect call bill almost every month. He was showing it. It was quite impressive. But just to go back a bit, this class action targets consumers because we're invoking consumer protection legislation. So a law firm, unless you go under the Competition Act, most probably a law firm would not be included because by definition they're not consumers, they're running a business. This is more for the families of not only prisoners actually, but anyone who's received a collect call across Canada in the last 3 years.
Not too many people get those anymore. Exactly,
which is, with the advent of cell phones and internet and Wi-Fi, most we would assume that the vast majority of these calls originate from prisons across Canada because those are the only places where you don't have access to the other technology.
If people, though, do use this service still, I'd be interested to hear from you about, the circumstances. They're part of this class action, though.
Exactly, and it's actually the people it's not the people that originate the call, it's the people receiving the call. So often they don't really have a choice. And what we're alleging is that Bell fails to disclose the rates when they connect the call. So somebody receiving the call will hear, hello, this is Bell Canada. You have a collect call from, and they'll give the name of the person. To accept the call, press 1. To refuse, press 2. And what is illegal and what is strictly prohibited under consumer protection legislation is to charge a price without disclosing the rates in a consumer contract. So that's what we're targeting Bell for in this particular case.
Those consumer protection laws that you just noted, are those in Quebec? Are they Canada-wide, in Ontario?
So every province has its own consumer protection legislation. In Quebec, we're looking at Section 12 of the Consumer Protection Act. In Ontario, I don't have it in front of me offhand, but it's there's not a big discrepancy or divergence between the different legislation. I believe in Ontario, it's the criteria is an unconscionable rate or an unconscionable conduct by the merchant. And we go back to those $157 for 12 calls when others have access to the same service for under $6 a month. I think we start getting next to what's considered unconscionable conduct on the behalf of Bell.
Do you think it's because it's old technology that they have to keep these payphones operating and there's not enough of them, there's not many of them, so it costs more to operate them? Or is this a cash grab? Like, what do you think is behind this?
I think it's a cash cow because the technology is there. It's not that the technology is not there. You don't have an operator sitting, like in 1970 in a room with a bunch of rotary phones connecting calls through cables underground. Today it's all by technology. Even if you see an old-fashioned looking payphone, once the person picks up that line, they're connected to the Bell Central. And the Bell Central, we all know, is high technology, and they're just connecting calls. How they're doing it, we'll find out through the trial, but I don't think they're using old technology. I think they're using new technology and just profiting from people who are in a very, very vulnerable situation.
I'm wondering, Joey, if you're successful, if the suit is successful, what difference do you think it would make for people like your client, the lead plaintiff, and her son?
Well, what we're hoping is to have these fees declared abusive by the court, and what we're certainly hoping as well is that these fees be reduced so that people would be able to contact their loved ones and have communication with people that are incarcerated without having to pay hundreds of dollars a month.
Did she ever pick up the phone and talk to Bell and say this is outrageous? I mean, apart from this lawsuit, did she try using normal channels to get to the bottom of it?
She has complained on many occasions for many different reasons with Bell, but as you, I'm sure, know, or I'm sure your listeners, try calling Bell. You'll wait on hold for an infinite amount of time, be connected to a call center overseas who don't really understand. And yes, she's tried, but she has not been successful.
Joey, most interesting. Thanks very much for this.
Thank you. Have a great day.
That's Joey Zukran. He's the Montreal lawyer who has filed a class action lawsuit against Bell Canada over the clarity of pricing of collect calls.